Welcome everybody here to the Passport Podcast. I am Anthony Irwin. I am the senior Lakers insider for Clutch Points. I am joined by Leigh Ellis, who honestly doesn't need. I've thought about which titles to give you. Is it basketball global connoisseur? Is it I could talk about all of the various places you were before, right? I could do all of that. But really, I had my wife listen to the show. And she's like, "Oh, he's that guy with the great voice and accent." I was like, "That also works." So, Leigh, how you holding up?
Let her know that I work on it every day, and that's how I've got to this point.
Today on the show, we're going to be diving into the latest on goings on around the NBA, where the Hall of Fame class of 2024 was enshrined this evening. It's happening right now, I believe.
Yes, it is.
One of the members of that class is Jerry West, and Baxter Holmes of ESPN wrote up, I thought, for one thing, brilliant writing, as you would, come to expect with Baxter, but just devastatingly sad story, honestly, is how I took it for ESPN about Jerry West's relationship with the Lakers. We're going to be talking a little bit about Derrick Rose as he was honored in Chicago, and the length to which we think he'll be honored kind of moving forward by the Chicago Bulls. And then, Leigh, we've done this for this is now our 5th episode. This is our 3rd NBA-centric one. And we started this at the beginning of the preseason. And I feel like that just symbolizes to me, maybe we have a little too much preseason.
Yes. No question. No question.
So we're going to talk about that there at the end of the show. But Leigh, how was your week? How are you holding up?
Doing well, man. Yeah. Got to see some of that preseason action last Monday night here in Toronto. In Toronto, God, where am I living? In Atlanta. Saw Zach Ricochet up close. Very impressed by him. Liked what I saw from the Hawks. I mean, preseason game, I think it's easy to get seduced by it, but it was fun. There's some talented players on that roster. And, of course, seeing the Pacers, Tyrese Halliburton, these guys didn't play all that much, the big names, but great to see him out there. I think Tyrese is one of those guys who, he's already put himself into that elite category of NBA player. I mean, he was on the Team USA roster, of course, in France. Didn't have a huge role, but, you can see by Los Angeles 2028 and beyond, Halliburton will be, I believe, one of the key players on those teams going forward.
Yeah, he's such a unique talent. His approach to the sport is very kind of Steve Nashian almost, and those kinds of players are some of my favorites. We'll talk, obviously, we'll kind of wander around this as well. A quick reminder, please do hit that subscribe button. If you guys are watching live here on YouTube, if you guys are watching on Twitter, head on over to YouTube, where you can find us at youtube.com/@basketballpassport. If there's any topic that you want to hit us with, I came up with this nice, easy email that you guys can have right there. It's basketballpassportpod@gmail.com. Where you can hit us there. And then if you guys are looking for a new podcast to subscribe to, if you've enjoyed what we've done to this point, hit subscribe wherever it is that you get your podcast, preferably on Odyssey. Gotta serve our corporate overlords. But I've been blown away by the response to our last episode on France, where the viewership here on YouTube was phenomenal, and the response to it and the response to those global podcasts has been great. Leigh, those are kind of your babies. How does that make you feel? I would imagine that was a nice little shot in the arm last week.
Yeah, it was a nice surprise. But that's what we're trying to do is highlight just how important and how impactful the game is around the world, and then also me sharing my experiences, telling my stories from playing there, from traveling there, from being there, and also, really from expanding my own audience into different places, because everywhere I have visited, I've always come away with it with, a few more connections and a few more people who say, hey, if you ever come back here or you want to go to a different part of the country, we'll stay in touch. And and hopefully do it again. And that's one of the things that I think that I've found most rewarding is that so many people message me after I've been there and I've played there, and they've said, "Hey man, I had a great time just playing basketball," because that's what it's all about. And so it's really fun to now be doing this with you every week, and hopefully we continue to grow and expand it through that same sort of way of the same platform there of sharing stories and including people along the way who have been part of the journeys and maybe even have won some of the prizes that I've given away too, because that's always something that brings a smile to people's face when they walk away with a jersey like the young Lucas did in Paris, where he won a Mike Bibby jersey. He didn't know who he was, and never heard of Mike Bibby.
Mike
probably
Bibby?
Didn't know. Probably
Who's
never knew
Bibby?
the Grizzlies ever were in Vancouver. But he walked home. I like what you said too. Imagine when he got home and his mum said, "Oh, where'd you get that?" "Oh, this guy was just giving it away." "For what?" "I did a half-court shot." "Who was that guy?" "I don't know. He was just some guy who was just there with his friends, and I hit a shot. They couldn't hit a shot, or they tried 5 or 6 times each. They couldn't hit a shot. I won it. I knocked it in, and I walked away with the jersey."
Yeah, they actually thanked me for making it and
Yeah.
taking us out of our misery as they were.
And then I was in his video and everything. It was crazy. It was wild.
All right, let's go ahead and dive on in. The NBA's Hall of Fame class of 2024 is being honored. They are currently being enshrined. People are giving their speeches, and everybody's getting their jackets. And obviously, you have the immense talents at the top of the class, right? Vince Carter's going in as a Raptor. What did that mean to you? That kind of I don't know that I was necessarily surprised, but
Yeah.
it was cool to see.
Yeah, well, when you look at Vince's, his career, he's got the jacket there with all the teams that he played for. And
Yeah.
honestly, when I saw the Kings and even the Suns, I was like, he never played. And then I'm like, oh yeah, he did actually, because towards the end he really bounced around a lot. But look, Vince, I think it is important. The Raptors is where he started his career, and he was so huge. I mean, we talked about this not long ago, where his impact on not only basketball in the city but in the country cannot be denied or underestimated. And while things didn't end in an ideal way, you got to move on, and you got to accept that that's how it goes. A lot of the times in pro sports, when players leave, like when Kevin Durant left OKC, like people weren't happy, but you can't undo all the good that he did for that city and for that team. And I truly believe that if Vince leaves earlier, like when, remember Steve Francis said he was never going to play for the Grizzlies. They drafted him anyway, and they had to trade him to the Rockets, and then the Grizzlies weren't around much longer after that. I do think that the Raptors probably were going to go down a similar path. And so, for all the way it ended, Vince deserves this honor. He was huge for the city. He was so much fun to watch. That playoff series against the Philadelphia 76ers in 2001 is one of the greatest series of all time. Vince was amazing. And I'm happy to see him in there, but also not just for what he did for the Raptors, for his service to the game, 22 seasons there. And towards the end, he was here in Atlanta, and he wasn't just ring chasing. He wasn't like, I'll just sit on the bench and be number 12 player on a team just to pick up a ring. He wanted to keep playing. And that's what I think really, stood out towards the end, is he would rather go out there and keep on playing, keep on competing, than just get a ring for the sake of it when, clearly he was no longer a franchise player. So happy to see him in there. I think he's well deserving, and it's great to see.
Yeah, this is, I think, where it's important that it's the Basketball Hall of Fame and not just the NBA Hall of Fame, because his impact on basketball in that region is unquestionable.
Yes.
Right? You cannot question what he did for the sport there. You made the point, I believe, on my pod. No, I think it was on this pod where we were talking about Vince, and we were talking about his relationship with the Raptors now that they were finally retiring his jersey, and how there's a good chance that the Raptors are no longer a thing. They would no longer exist if not for Vince Carter's impact on that region. So
yeah.
And also, like, I just, with it being the Basketball Hall of Fame, somebody who clearly loved basketball as much as he did, enough to stick around as long as he did, and every single stop later in his career spoke extremely highly of his impact on the locker room, his impact on the young players in that organization. And even after the year that he retired, there were still teams that were kind of like reaching out and saying like,
Oh
hey,
yeah,
just in case, you want to be our Udonis Haslam or something like that.
yeah,
We'd love to have you. So
yeah.
Vince, not just in terms of like sheer excitement, because he was, for my money, the best dunker, in game or dunk contest
Yeah.
dunker that we'll ever see, have ever seen, may ever see. But on top of it, just like a great guy who stood for all of what basketball brings to the table.
Absolutely, and I'll just say, my last story too is, I was a big NBA fan, of course, in the '90s, and then during the '98 lockout, I moved to London and sort of fell out of love with the NBA because the strike was on. Jordan retired, and I felt like, if they're not going to play, there's nothing to keep my attention. So I was in England, started following football, soccer really, really closely. Then I came to Toronto in 2001, and I went to my first NBA game, and it was a Raptors game versus the Pistons, and this happened.
7 to shoot. Carter fires. Got it. They should have fouled. They chose that, although at least the Pistons do get the ball.
So, for someone who sort of had fallen out of love with their girlfriend there, go to an NBA game, heard so much about Vince being the next Michael Jordan and all the talent and everything. Didn't have a good shooting game that night. Went 7 for 22, but it went to overtime. And what I loved about it, I was like, well, I want to see this guy demand the ball and at least take that shot. If it goes in, it misses, whatever. And Vince did that. The team needed him. He was having a bad night. He put all that to the side and hit the game winner. And I just thought, man, all right, I'm back in, baby. And it was awesome. And then, as I referred to earlier, they played the 76ers in that playoff series. They knocked out the Knicks in the first round. They were down 1-0 in that series. And it was great. So very, very happy for Vince. And again, through my time at NBA TV, fortunate that I got to speak to him quite a few times. And he never gave me that sort of like, all right, man, I've spoken to you enough, speak to someone else. I every time I saw him at the finals or on the road, I would put in the request and say, hey, can I just do 5 minutes with Vince? And they were like, Leigh, okay. But Vince never sort of gave you that like, all right, I've spoken to you enough. So really, really happy to see him in there, and great day for him and the Raptors.
Michael Cooper also going in, and I just spoke about Coop on the show on in the lounge, and my only kind of main talking point here on Coop is, we honor guys who make their impact on the offensive side of the ball, and we honor like the Vinnie Johnsons of the world, and not saying that they shouldn't be honored. Obviously, scoring is very important. They tally up the number of points that you have at the end of the game. But I always felt that like we kind of tend to ignore the defensive side of the ball and the impact that can be made by players like that. Coop came off the bench for the most of his career. Every single night was asked to guard the other team's best player because Magic wasn't going to, he wasn't going to do that. And then, took all of that, like was happy to do it, and was just the ultimate teammate, was willing to sacrifice whatever he needed to sacrifice for an all-time great team to go out there and go on that dynastic run. Would not have happened without Michael Cooper specifically. And I think, especially seeing as the Lakers have their policy, only Hall of Famers get their jerseys retired. And it always felt so wrong that Michael Cooper didn't have his jersey up there. Yeah. And I'm happy that it's finally going to go up there. It's just the ultimate teammate, great human being. And this moment, just knowing how much this moment meant to him, given how long he had to wait for it, just an incredible sight to see.
Yeah, Game 5 of the West Semis in '88 against the Jazz. There's a really cool play. The Lakers tough series, and they go to Coop. They call his number, and he hits the game-winning shot. And he talks about how just, you've got Magic and Worthy and Byron and Kareem on that team. And they called Coop, and he stepped up and knocked it down. And that just sort of, again, speaks to his humbleness, because he probably could have gone elsewhere and gotten a bigger role, but he knew what he had there. And this is kind of the defining image, I think, of, Cooper and the Showtime era Lakers there, the high socks, the small shorts, although everyone kind of had the short shorts back then. But, him and Pat Riley there, just really understanding what their relationship was too, that, Coop was a role player, but he was a very, very important one, and they valued him so highly. Could hit the three, a bit of a 3-and-D guy, before his time, really, in that sense. Won the Defensive Player of the Year, hit 6 threes in the finals too, which was a record at the time. And one of those players, also one of those legendary players who, when he was going to launch a shot, had the whole the Great Western Forum there.
Yep.
Wouldn't that be just like the most awesome feeling, So beloved by the fans, highly respected by his teammates and valued. Took him obviously a long time to get in there, but eventually he's in there, well deserving. And, just again, that throwback to that incredible Showtime 80s Lakers era.
Yeah, I wish that there was a way for the Lakers to do more to honor those great role players, because in almost every other organization, Coop's jersey would have been retired forever ago.
Yeah.
Winning all of the championships that he did. They fly that stupid banner for the in-season tournament anyway. So like you've already cheapened the tradition up there by flying that anyway. So like fly a different one and make it, or do like a Ring of Honor kind of a deal for some of those great players where their jersey isn't necessarily retired or whatever, but you do honor them. The Derek Fishers of the world, obviously previously would have been Coop. Maybe like Robert Horry goes up there too. Those guys that were a part of history and an irreplaceable part of history. And just given how much I know this means to Coop.
Yeah.
I was doing, I've told stories about these times that I went to Spectrum. James Worthy, it's like, that night, I think it was Norm Nixon who was doing a show there, and I think it was James Worthy, or it was like some former great, and they asked James, like, hey, have you heard from Coop lately? And he goes, and again, like James, a truly hilarious individual. I find James really, really funny. And he goes, Coop, oh, that MFer, he'll disappear for like 6 months, and he'll show up and he'll pretend you saw him yesterday. Yes, just Coop. I'll see him next time. And it was just like, and Coop is a little eccentric. I think he kind of had to be, in order to make your impact on the sport the way that he did. And yeah, just is really happy for Coop. West is one here. This is his third time going in. One time as a player, one time as a member of the 66 Olympic team. And this time now going in as to honor the impact he had on the sport as an executive. So far, the extent to which the Lakers have sang West's praises for going into the Hall of Fame is with a single tweet that just says legend. Pretty basic, whatever. And you compare it to how they're celebrating Michael Cooper going in, and it's a pretty stark comparison. Obviously, like you and I could sit here and talk forever about Jerry West's impact on the sport. I think he's on the Mount Rushmore of most important players ever. Not just for the Lakers, but like ever, when you count what he did as a player and as an executive at his various stops. For my money, I think he's the greatest executive of all time, given how immediate the impact he always had was, whether it was him showing up and situations getting better or him leaving and situations getting worse. Just an absolute icon, and getting honored this third time. I'm happy that they found a way to honor Jerry West in this specific fashion where he has gone in 3 different times. Anything that you want to say, kind of generally about Jerry West before we get to the Lakers aspect of this?
Well, I think the most underrated move he ever made was signing Brian Cardinal to a 6-year deal at the Memphis Grizzlies, because the owner was pissing him off and saying, are you going to do anything? And he called up Brian Cardinal's agent and said, we'll give you 6 years and $33 million. Slammed the phone down. Are you happy now? I mean,
Cardinals like, yes.
Yeah. That's one of those ones that everyone's like, if Jerry West sees it in him, then there must be something there. But no, I mean, obviously, when I think of the Lakers, you think of Jerry West, you think of the logo, and that relationship that soured so bitterly obviously largely between him and Jeanie, because that's the article we referred to there from Baxter Holmes. It starts with the leadership at the top there, and clearly Jeanie fell out with Jerry. I think it had a lot to do with the Phil Jackson situation and the relationship there. And it's actually tragic that they were never able to find a way to reconcile there, because I think Dr. Buss, Jeannie's father, was exceptionally proud and had admired Jerry West for all he did, giving him those season tickets, the 4 tickets that Jeanie ultimately took off Jerry West. I mean, it's very, very sad. Jerry wanted to continue. He wanted to return to the Lakers, but that call never came. And so that's one of those situations that even since his passing, as you mentioned, the Lakers really haven't shown sort of too much affection toward him, which is really, really sad. Because I mean, again, he's the logo of the NBA. And everything he did was successful. Obviously, he was largely behind getting Kobe there to the Lakers. There was another great story in that Baxter Holmes article, I believe it was, basically when Kobe came to work out, and after 5 minutes, Jerry West was like, right, I've seen enough. Let's get this done. And they did. But, I also remember that during the Kobe and Shaq, tension in the 2000 and 2001 years, they'd won the championship those 3 years, 2000, 2001, 2002, but there was a lot of tension building there, and Jerry was the sort of, the go-between to try to keep them on track so that at least they could go out there and succeed. So, very, very, sad that whole situation there with the Lakers ownership. But I think most fans just remember him for everything he basically did, became successful, and he is a Lakers icon, and whether you put him on that Mount Rushmore of Lakers legends or NBA legends, however, people have their own ways of sort of, qualifying what they believe is more important, but you cannot deny that Jerry as a player, as a coach too, and then as an administrator, very, very important. And remember, this did actually extend to the Warriors too. Remember, there was talk about the Warriors were going to trade Klay Thompson for Kevin Love. Yep. And he said, if you trade Klay, I'm out of here. So Jerry wasn't just like a sort of guy who had success with Los Angeles there. He had an ability to, get teams to understand what he wanted, and that was great. So, 3 times, man. I wonder if, if he was still around, if you're like, oh man, again, like I'm already in there twice.
I think that's actually how he felt. Like was essentially his response was like, why?
Yeah.
For what? My only thing on the Lakers thing, and again, I spent time on this on Lakers Lounge just a short time ago, and it's one of those things that like it's so easy for us to take for granted that I'll eventually one day we'll figure this out. One day we'll come back and have that conversation that needs to be had, and we'll let bygones be bygones. And then, that one day is just now not possible. And the only way that they might be able to let those bygones be bygones is to reach out to West family. But if I were West family, I wouldn't be interested in talking to Jeanie Buss.
Yeah. And even if they did, I mean, it's it's too late. It's too late.
And taking season tickets that, again, a Lakers source confirmed to Baxter Holmes that was a lifelong promise that Dr. Buss had implemented to Jerry West and his family. And, simply because Jerry was concerned about, and now look, like, I also think that like there was some pettiness there on Jerry's part too.
Of course.
He was famously difficult to work with. He's a very passionate guy. He ran hot. He's he was incredibly driven, and he expected that out of the people that he worked with. And that could sometimes, kind of erode a relationship too. But at the end of the day, the people here who held the leverage, the Lakers were the people who could tell him, you can't have these tickets anymore. Like for them to be as petty as they have been, and for it to basically be because he was concerned about the nepotism that could potentially jump up by way of Jeannie's relationship with Phil and some potential unprofessional behavior there. And because this is the part that like made me laugh out loud, because this is also touched on in his autobiography. Jerry West wanted to hire Phil Jackson. Kurt Rambis thought that he should be the next official coach of the Lakers, and that somehow 30 some odd, 40 some odd years later would still be a point of contention, given how well Phil coached the Lakers.
Yeah,
clearly Jerry was onto something, Kurt. And that would lead to, that was kind of where the beginning of that relationship's erosion started. And that was where that was the first kind of point of tension between Jerry Buss and Linda Rambis and Kurt Rambis. And then, by extension, Jeanie Buss, or Jerry West and Jeanie Buss. And that it would just keep on snowballing from there to a point now where the guy is dead. And it took the Lakers some 6 hours to actually honor him on the day that he actually died. Again, you could look at their official account right now, and it's tweet after tweet after tweet after tweet after tweet about Michael Cooper making it to the Hall of Fame. And there's one little graphic calling Jerry West a legend. It still remains. That tension still remains. Yeah. And it's just so sad. It's a, not just from a basketball perspective, not even nearly as much from a basketball perspective, purely from a human perspective here, where all of a sudden, like, did you watch Succession?
Oh, I've seen, I started to, yeah.
So, spoiler alert, one of the main characters dies in Succession, and it's, it's a character that has ties to a bunch of these other characters. And there's this whole episode as all of these characters come to grips with the fact that they are never going to have that conversation that, lets this character know how much he meant to them, the familial ties, all of the stuff. I'm really trying not to give it away because you're watching the show now. And it's just like, as somebody who did have a kind of a strained relationship with my dad, to now like watch him be a grandfather. And I do get to like have that moment of, yeah, that was tough, but you're still my dad. My kids still love you. And I never have to wake up, on the day that my dad passes. I'll never have to say like, man, I really wish I could have figured that out. I'm really proud about that. And the fact that like Jeanie is never going to have that, I think is going to be something that really bothers her probably for the rest of her life.
Yeah, I mean, it would definitely, Dr. Buss wouldn't have liked that. He would, he would have stepped in at some point and cleared that up. Though he didn't die until 2012, so it had been going for probably 8 to 10 years at that point anyway, which is a surprise. But I think we should also just clarify, while the Lakers took away those season tickets, they did say in that article, according to Baxter, that anytime he wanted them, he would have been given tickets. It just wasn't that he was sent them in the
nosebleeds.
But yeah, it's look, it's very strange to me. Like, obviously I knew about it, but then when you read it, you're like, man, the Lakers not being able to, fix that is quite a mark on the franchise.
The last couple inductees, Jack Nicholson going in as like a super fan of the Los Angeles Lakers, Spike Lee going in for his, kind of impact on the Knicks.
Taunting. He went in for taunting.
Yeah. What do you think about this? Like this move, honoring essentially celebrities for rooting for a basketball team?
Yeah, I think it's fine because you do associate a lot of these guys with a team. Nav Bhatia in Toronto was the first one in. I got to speak to him in Chicago about it. He was basically brought to tears because, what an honor to be in the Hall of Fame as a fan. And I'm not sure if this remains, but for a while there, certainly pre-COVID, Nav never missed a home game from the moment the Raptors were in the league. He formed huge friendships and bonds with pretty much every significant, franchise player, and not even that, just players on other teams. And so I think, to be honest, I'm surprised Jack didn't go in first because, you think of Showtime Lakers, you see Jack standing on the sidelines there, clapping his hands. He was as big a part of that team as anyone. Yeah, and then of course, obviously with Shaq and Kobe as well, he was there. Haven't seen him as much in recent times, but I was reminded as well of one of the most amazing clips in NBA history involving Jack Nicholson from the NBA Finals in 1984.
Kevin, a little sidebar to this series. The great actor Jack Nicholson was in the Boston Garden. He really stirred that crowd up, and then he left early. Wouldn't you know it? He was on the team plane with the Celtics coming out to Los Angeles. The movie? It was Terms of Endearment. He won an Academy Award for his part in that movie. They got down to the end of it, the critical scenes. M.L. Carr took off his headset, threw it down, says, I'm not watching the end of your movie. You didn't watch the end of our Victor.
What a time that a dude courtside was just sucking on a dart while the NBA Finals were. I mean, 1984, 40 years ago, that was, you can just imagine now when the waitresses came out with drinks and then ashtray, sir, just put that under your feet. How anyone from that era hasn't all just died from cancer or some other, disease when you're smoking in an arena like that with all these incredible athletes and things like that. But I mean, how cool is that? That Jack was just there and on the team playing there with the Celtics. But again, it does speak to actually just how huge he was as a Lakers fan, that he was traveling cross country during the NBA Finals. So great to see him in the Hall of Fame. We don't really see him at too many Lakers games anymore, though, do we?
His health, I think, has taken a bit of a turn. He's getting up there in age. You mentioned the dart that he's smoking.
I mean, what could it possibly be?
I was, as you were talking and you mentioned how we haven't seen very much of Jack at these games. Actually, one of the few that he's been able to make during the LeBron era, LeBron made a point of going over there and saying hi to Jack, and that really meant something to the Lakers fan base. LeBron is not somebody that the Lakers drafted. He hasn't been with the Lakers his entire career, but to actually understand the history and that moment and how much that moment would mean to Lakers fans, I think was really important there. And the last one here, we talked about Spike Lee, Billy Crystal. I have a quick story on Billy Crystal, who's also being honored. Billy Crystal, obviously LA, famous LA actor, Clipper super fan. For a time, the Clippers were actually thinking about moving away from LA and actually going and playing in Anaheim at the pond, the old Arrowhead Pond, which was right down the street from where I lived, where I grew up. And so I guess Donald Sterling was thinking about doing it. And I guess word got around to Billy Crystal, and Billy calls up Sterling and says, hey, if you do this, I'm never going to your games. I am not making that commute from LA to freaking Anaheim in Orange County. That is way too far to go out and watch a game on any given night. And I don't know if it was the reason that they didn't do it, but it was certainly one of the reasons that the Clippers stayed in Los Angeles, was so that they could keep superfan Billy Crystal.
Yeah, well, who cares if it's true or not? It's a great story, And you want to.
I'm very sure it's true. I just don't know the extent to which it mattered in keeping them in LA.
Look,
source is a good source on this one.
Yeah, I mean, it was probably one of those things where he sort of said, "Listen, I've spoken to my friends. I've spoken to people. Celebrities aren't going to make the trek out there, and that's what obviously the Clippers wanted to have, any sort of support and." If you're not going to have it, then it makes it hard. But I imagine, yes, if you're in Los Angeles, trekking out to Anaheim for a game for the the little brother of the city team, it's not going to happen. You're going to build something of a fan base there with people in Anaheim. Of course, the Ducks were there, the Angels were there, so it's not like they wouldn't support a team, but it just doesn't have the same ring to it when you say Anaheim versus Los Angeles.
Yeah, it would have been a big ask. I'm really happy that they're doing this because such a big part of the NBA's kind of culture is the celebrity, right? Every
sure.
Lakers game, they pan around and you see Denzel there, and you see Diane Cannon there, and you see so and so. You go to a Knicks game, and you go to a Celtics game, and they're honoring current athletes or former athletes from the cities of New York and Boston, and so on and so forth. And I think they do make up a big and important part of the NBA's tapestry over the years. So it's a really cool moment.
Yeah, for sure. And again, that when I think of Navbache there, just by the baseline in Toronto, he must have gone through it like Billy Crystal. I wonder what Billy Crystal's record would be versus Navbache's there, because there were some lean years there for the Raptors, but Nav was loyal. He stayed there the whole time and got rewarded in the end by getting a championship ring and then getting a Hall of Fame ring. So it was worth it, because there must have been some Tuesday nights in 2007, 2006 where Nav was just thinking, what am I doing, still spending all this money on these tickets? But ultimately it paid off, and good to see the NBA deciding that it was time to start honouring some of these these fans who are really connected to some of the teams.
Yep, absolutely. All right, somebody who I think eventually probably going to be a Hall of Famer. You think Rose? You think Rose will be a Hall of Famer eventually?
That's the one. I mean, I think it's like he's going to be the only MVP not in the Hall of Fame, because Rose's first 4 or 5 seasons incredible.
Yeah.
But then it feels like after he did his knee for about the 3rd time there, that he just never really played at a high level ever again. He obviously got traded. He bounced around to Cleveland and New York and Minnesota. He went on so many teams, but he just never was ever able to recapture that form. And it was really tough, because it was a Chicago kid, the number 1 pick. And listen, if it wasn't for LeBron, I think the Bulls probably win the championship in 2011 there. I think, they were a great team, but injuries really played a huge part. And then Rose, I think as well with Rose, it took him so long to come back as well. That was the other thing.
Yeah.
He came back and injured himself again. And, I think maybe he does. I mean, again, look, Michael Cooper got in. He wasn't an MVP. Obviously, he wasn't even an all-star, whereas Rose was. And again, you said off the top, there's no real criteria for the Hall of Fame. No one really knows it. You can be a role player, you can be a star player. It doesn't seem to have any real tight criteria. It's almost more just like, hey, you think this guy can come in? Yeah, sure, why not? So Rose probably does get in there at some point, but I would say, based on what I believe the criteria should be, he probably doesn't, because he just didn't have a long enough career at the high level. I remember actually when he was on the Knicks down here in Atlanta in that playoff series where the Raptors, man, my brain's back in Toronto. The Hawks won that series against the Knicks, but Derrick Rose was actually the Knicks' best player, which was kind of weird. It was like, man, how is he still playing such an important role on this team back there with Coach Thibs? The Hawks won the series. But, yeah, I mean, like I say, I'd say probably not. I don't think he's done enough overall to get in there. He played, of course, for Team USA a couple of times as well. But me saying that, I wouldn't probably put him in there, but I think he ultimately does get in out of almost sentimental reasons, if not just for the statistical ones.
Yeah, it's tough. The injuries were a thing, and then he had the whole off-court allegations that also really kind of derailed, not necessarily, well, partially his career. He was never really the same. And certainly his perspective around the league changed after that, and he's been kind of fighting to get back to that level of popularity. Before the injuries and those allegations and that entire ordeal, he was maybe the most popular player in the league.
I think that's definitely true. Yeah.
He was an incredibly popular player. He was up there with LeBron. He was up there with Kobe. He was just like, especially in Chicago, where he was just honored. That's why we're talking about it. He was just, godlike, and he was on such an incredible trajectory that you thought, like, no doubt about it, this guy's eventually going to be a Hall of Famer. And, it is really kind of too bad how it played out. Now, he did enjoy a little bit of success late in his career, kind of more as that, low minutes vet coming off of the bench. And I really wish he would have learned to shoot better.
Especially from three. He got that little mid-range game going there. He worked on that. He couldn't really shoot when he started. Became more effective at it. But yeah, 3-time All-Star, MVP. That's the MVP carries a lot of weight, of course, but I just don't think there's much sort of meat on the bone after that. I will say he still had also one of the most impressive playoff debuts in 2009 against the Celtics in Boston, 36 points. They win in overtime, and he was just incredible. That was an amazing series. The Celtics ultimately came and won it in 7.
Bull series were so great.
Oh, yeah. But Rose, I remember thinking already, oh, my God, this guy's already, elevated himself. And again, he came from Chicago, got drafted by the Bulls, number 1 pick, and lived up to that hype. That's the toughest thing to do. Surrounded himself with his family. I think his brothers really took care of him to try to make sure that he would stay on the, right path there. And early on he did, he was, one of the most popular players easily. And I remember even at the starters, back on NBA TV there, anytime you would sort of bring up Derrick Rose, it was always one of the shows that got most comments and people talking, because Rose fans, they were so passionate and really, really wanted to remind everyone about what he was. But ultimately, his career, gets cut short for a multitude of reasons. And the fact that he was able to sort of stick around for 16 in the end is probably, a testament to his ability, to keep going, because it seemed everywhere he went, he got injured and wasn't able to establish himself ever again.
He was honored in Chicago, and we're kind of wondering, all right, maybe if not for the Hall of Fame, and I don't know about any certain rules there with Chicago and needing to be in the Hall of Fame to have your jersey retired. But that aside, would you, if you were the Bulls, would you retire his jersey?
Do you retire his jersey? I mean, I look again. I don't know. Every team seems to have its own sort of rules and regulations for how they retire them. He is beloved there. I mean, I think they probably will. I really don't have a sort of opinion either way, because I don't think he's qualified for it. But again, it's not always just about the accolades. It's about what he meant to the city. And that was the best Bulls team clearly since Jordan retired in '98. They had some bad Bulls teams there for a lot of years, and Rose and Noah and Deng and those guys, gave the Bulls a real chance again. But they just couldn't get past LeBron and the Heat. So look, I probably wouldn't, but I ultimately think they will, because there's, again, after the 6 championships, they haven't had a ton to celebrate there in Chicago. So maybe they want to raise it for one of their own.
So I'm looking here at the list of players, people whose jersey or I guess like last name would be retired. Jerry Sloan, who played in Chicago for 10 seasons, averaged 14.5 points and 7.5 rebounds in about 700 games or so. 4-time all defensive player on the first team, and then a 2-time All-Star. Bill Russell, his number 6 jersey is retired in Chicago, despite never playing for the Bulls. Bob Love, his retired. Now, Bill Russell's jersey is retired across the NBA, so there's that to be said. But Bob Love, his jersey is retired. His number 10 is retired there. He played 9 seasons in Chicago, averaged 21 points and 6.8 rebounds a game in 600 games. He was a 3-time All-Star, never an MVP. Some guy named Michael Jordan he's
just retired in Miami, so it must be a different guy.
Yeah, and then Scottie Pippen, his jersey is retired. Phil Jackson's again, like I don't know, its jersey isn't retired. I guess I don't know.
His beard.
And then Jerry Krause also has his persona retired, and Red Kerr also has it has something retired in his name. So I don't know. Given that list, I think Rose winds up getting his jersey.
Yeah,
I like it. Bob Love, I think, is kind of the bar becomes low enough because of Bob Love that I think Rose winds up getting.
Yeah. Well, I guess it comes down to the Reinsdorf family as well, if they decide they want to honor it.
Does it cost money? Because that really matters to Jerry Reinsdorf.
Yeah, the White Sox, didn't the White Sox just have the worst season ever in baseball? Yeah. But I'm somewhat surprised then that they didn't retire Horace Grant as well, considering his role on those first 3 championships. Rodman as well. Like some of those guys had a big role there. So. Yeah, who knows? Who knows? It's a tough one because he just doesn't have the longevity of accolades, but he has heavily weighted accolades as well there too. Because 2011 he was All NBA first team as well to go along with that MVP. So it's sort of really compacted in there within five seasons or so. He got a lot done, but that was about it. And how much weight does all that carry? And again, ultimately they didn't have a championship to show for it or anything like that. It was just he's a Chicago kid, and that may be enough to get his name up there. Yeah.
I kind of feel like Luol Deng should get his jersey retired there, because seeing as they almost killed him, like staph infections and all of that. I feel like
I thought you meant from Tibbs playing him 46 minutes.
Well,
that
too. Like, all of it. Like I feel like that whole era, like Kirk Heinrich, Jimmy Butler. Joakim Noah, like those guys should get their jerseys retired because it should just say asterisk Tibbs, and I think everybody would understand.
Tibbs minutes, Tibbs minutes is the criteria.
All right, final topic here before we get out of here. The NBA's preseason is roughly a month, and most teams play about between 6 and 8 games over the course of that month in preparation for the NBA season. Do you think do you think it's too long in the sense of like how long we are in the preseason and during the NBA's calendar? Or do you think it's too long in the sense of like they play too many games? What's your stance on the preseason?
Yeah, I mean, look, LeBron had the tweet the other day when the Lakers flew to Milwaukee for a game, and I have to say I agree with him. It's like, why are the Lakers flying to Milwaukee for a preseason? Why wouldn't they just play the Clippers, the Warriors, the Jazz, the Nuggets, the Blazers, those teams? I mean, like, there's no need for that I can understand why the Lakers have to fly to Milwaukee for a preseason game. And even if they did, why LeBron would have to, why he would bother going on that trip? Why wouldn't he just stay back and say, all right, send out our, let Bronny Jr. and all the other, players on the periphery go out there and play that game, because it just doesn't make these guys travel so much throughout the season. They're cross country all the time across different time zones. It doesn't seem to make any sense to do it during the preseason. I honestly think 2 or 3 games, 1 week is all you need, and then get into it. The players should be working out in the summer. Most of them are, so they're ready. They do a training camp with their teams, have a couple of games, and then just get into it, because meaningless games is tough to watch. We've talked about it in the past, where you sort of look at a preseason game, what do you try to take out of it? It's hard to take anything out of it when you see some guys who are playing who won't even be on the roster on opening night. So I would shrink it, and I definitely would just say, listen, the Bucks play the Bulls and the Pistons and the Pacers, and that's it. And there's
regional.
There's no need for any team to travel 3 or 4 hours for a preseason game and then fly back the next day. It just doesn't seem to make any sense.
Yeah, the only thing, like the international stuff, I think does matter. And sending teams out to different countries and stuff like that travel makes sense, because the point is expanding the game. But sending the Lakers to Milwaukee, last year was the Bucks to LA, right? They did like a home and home kind of a thing. That doesn't really make much sense to me. And like the fact that they're, in this kind of weird season's kind of getting closer, but it doesn't necessarily feel that way for basically an entire month. It gets a lot. Like it becomes a lot to try to get people and keep people's attention for it. My one thing I would say, if you do want to keep it this long, is have some more fun with it. Like more neutral and like classic type of backgrounds, right? We've talked about playing a game at Rucker. We've talked about playing a game out in Santa Monica, or we've talked about playing a game in like the Hoosiers gym or something like that. And like just really have some fun with it. So that you could make these moments. It's something that I think baseball does really, really well. They play their game out in, is this heaven? No, it's Iowa. They play a game out there in Iowa, for the Field of Dreams game. Like that was so cool. I don't know if you watched it, but
but I know, I know baseball because they've played in Australia. Now they're actually regular season games, but they open the season. Obviously, in different parts of the world, which is great. But again, those games carry stakes. So that's why it's important to play those games but like that. But yeah, it's...
Do you see the NFL is thinking about having an international Super Bowl?
Really?
Yeah, the commissioner, the commissioner said that that's something that they're, kind of kicking around the office.
They should. Absolutely, they should. I mean, because, the NFL is obviously the biggest sport in this country, and this Super Bowl attracts a lot of international attention, but not for the game necessarily, more for the spectacle of who's performing and where it is and what, all the sort of bells and whistles and things like that. But, for the NFL to really make inroads internationally, they should take the Super Bowl and go and play it somewhere. You could pick any city in the world and they'd be more than willing to host it, because they know it'd be a boon for that city. And, there'd be endless possibilities for where you go. I'm guessing it would be somewhere like Paris or London first.
Yeah, I think London first, because they really tried to get in with London.
And Wembley Stadium, I mean, that's an iconic arena to play it, and you can have 100,000 people there as well, which would be huge to have it there. So that's a great idea, and I think they should do that for sure, because, again, these preseason games in Abu Dhabi, they're fun, they're cute, but there's ultimately nothing of value on the game. And I think the strategy should be to add stakes so that people see, everyone really, really competing as hard as they can.
Yep, I agree 100%. Shorten it or get more creative, or just do something. I think it's a little stale as it currently exists right now. All right. That I think is going to do it here for this episode of the the Sunday night episode. We're now going to preview where we're going to be taking you on the Thursday global episode here, which I'm telling you, have been an absolute delight to be a part of, and people really seem to enjoy them. So I hope you guys tune in on Thursday. Lee, where are you taking us?
Yeah, I'm really excited about this one, because we just spoke a lot about Derrick Rose, and back in 2013 in Croatia, in Zagreb, when he was at the height of his sort of fame and his power there, Adidas put together this court, and they made it a fantastic court, did an awesome job renovating it, but unfortunately, they never really kept up the maintenance on it. And now this is the court. Look at that. From 2013 to 2022. That's the same court there. But there's a reason I wanted to bring that up, because Zagreb, of course, is where Dražen Petrović played some of his career. I met Dražen Petrovic's mother while I was there, which was incredible. I played on that court there in Tuškanik, and I've got a really, really, really cool, one of my favorite stories to tell about the outcome of me playing there in Tuškanik, because I had an unbelievable response to that from the people in Zagreb. And not only that, the following night, I actually played another street ball pickup game with a former NBA player. A former NBA player came out to one of the runs and played, and I got a few dimes from him. It was great. I mean, it was so cool. So we'll be in Zagreb, Croatia on Thursday from about 11:30 Eastern. I think that's what time we're aiming for. So tune in. If you got any questions, let us know about them, and we'll see you on Thursday. What's that Gmail
It's so easy to remember. I don't know why we keep on basketballpassportpod@gmail.com is where you could send us that. You can also hit us on social. I am at Anthony Irwin LA. You can find Lee on all of his socials at Lee Ellis. My DMs are open too. So if you guys want to hit me with topics there as well, you can do that. And until then, everybody have a great rest of your weekend and get out there and enjoy the rest of your week. And on Thursday, we'll take you to Zagreb. I can't wait. I cannot wait. Safe travels, everybody.